It's coming up to 46 minutes past 2. Now, more than 50,000 disabled people who had cars or other vehicles specially adapted for them have had the vehicles taken away because of a move to a new disability benefit. The BBC's disability news correspondent, Nikki Fox, has the details. Nikki, hello.
Hey, Nikki.
Hey, guys. So
this is DLA to PIP.
DLA to PIP, yeah. So to give you a bit of background, in 2013, as part of the government's welfare reforms, a new disability benefit was introduced called personal independence payments. That replaced the old school benefit disability living allowance. So from 2013, there was a gradual replacing of people going from DLA to PIP. Now, to be eligible for a Motability vehicle on DLA, you had to be in receipt of the higher rate mobility component. So that just means that you have been assessed and deemed as, having sort of the most severe mobility needs, So those people on the higher rate DLA were eligible for the Motability scheme. In the transfer, when they've been reassessed to personal independence payments to PIP, they were found as no longer being eligible for the higher rate, which on PIP they call the enhanced rate. Therefore, they lost their cars.
Nikki,
they lost their Motability.
Just to be clear about the assessment criteria, is it true that a woman with multiple sclerosis, a feather was put on her hand? Did I read that correctly? I saw this.
Oh, I didn't know.
One of the assessments was to see if she could feel.
Well, I mean, I speak to a lot of
stories,
charities. Yeah. I mean, the MS Society have estimated about 1,000 people have lost their Motability vehicles, in the transport.
Why is Dystrophy are saying it's 900 cars a day?
Yeah, now they've taken those figures. They're from January to March this year. They've estimated that it's 900 a week handing back their cars.
Wow.
So it's really quite extraordinary.
And some of these cars as well, some disabled people drive just an automatic or a manual car, but some have adaptations.
I mean, I'm just looking on the BBC website. There's a woman, she's 41, and she had a Motability vehicle taken away from her in June last year after being reassessed. She has multiple sclerosis. She says the assessor did not see her walk. How she came to that conclusion when she's not seen me walk? She's not seen me walk up and down stairs. All she did was tickle my hand with a feather.
Yeah.
There's been so much criticism of the assessment process. You do hear lots of stories.
Horror stories, yeah. So what's the case? DLA used to be a big old form, used to be about your condition, lots and lots of detail. The PIP assessment form, much more straightforward, couple of boxes.
Well, the PIP assessment form, you've got questions that you need to go through. So you need to, not everybody who was on DLA will have to have an assessment. Some just get transferred. But those that have to have an assessment, there's a set amount of questions, and the outcome of which deems whether you're going to get either the enhanced rate or the standard rate. Okay. Obviously, on PIP, you need the enhanced rate to be eligible for the Motability scheme.
Nikki, stay with us because we've got Alan Kemp with us. His car was taken away from him after he was reassessed, as you've described, for this new benefit. Alan, what happened? Thank you for being with us.
Oh, that's okay, yeah. Well, what happened was that, yes, I had the mobility component on DLA, awarded for life. The letter came through, I had to go for a reassessment, and I just thought, it's a paper exercise, we'll go along, see what's done, and then everything will be okay. Until the letter came through 6 weeks later, saying that my assessment, they deemed that I am able to walk normally because I was observed walking normally, and therefore I can walk upwards of 200 metres.
And what in reality is the distance you can walk?
In reality, any step I take is painful. I have a muscle wasting condition, and therefore, as I've got older, my legs have got worse, and I wear leg braces, which are pretty uncomfortable, but at least they keep me upright most of the time. I walk with constant pain, and the most I can walk without really taking a break is about 15 to 20 metres.
So how did they get it so wrong?
Well, they got it wrong. At the time of my assessment, I was working, and I believe one of the questions she asked me was, take me through a typical day, which I explained to her, because I worked at Heathrow Airport at the time, and I said, well, I go to work, and I get out of the car, and I get on the staff bus, then I have to get to the security post, and I have to walk from the security post, from the bus to the security post. And she said to me, well, how long does that take you? I said, well, it takes me about 5 minutes. Okay, she said, and we carried on chatting. when I actually saw the paperwork with the department where I was observed at the assessment to be walking normally, they say that if you can walk for 5 minutes normally, you can actually walk 200 metres.
But what you were saying was it took you 5 minutes, not that you were walking for 5 minutes.
Exactly. That takes me 5 minutes, but everybody else that got off the bus were at the
30
security,
seconds.
passed and gone, and I was the last one getting there.
Did you appeal the decision at all?
I did appeal. I did the mandatory appeal straight away, and that came back in October saying, no, you still don't qualify. So I then went for the tribunal appeal, and that wasn't going to be held until February. And 3 days before Christmas, I get a letter from Motability Operations telling me that I've got to hand the car back on the 9th of January because I'm not eligible for the mobility component. And
Nicky,
in that letter, they gave me an option.
Mm-hmm.
I could take a £2,000 cash price,
Right.
cash to allow me to carry on getting around, or I can buy the car from Motability with a £2,000 discount. So I had to, because I need the car, I can't get around without the car, I had to then scramble around to try and find the money to buy the car because I need a car. Without a car, I'm housebound.
So what happens next? You're still in the appeal process?
No, the appeal was held on the 1st of February.
Okay.
And on the 13th of February, the letter dropped through the door saying that, Mr. Kemp, you've now been re-awarded the mobility component.
Meanwhile...
So I handed the car back.
Yeah.
I had to buy it. Well, I didn't hand the car back. I had to raise the money. I borrowed the money to buy the car. I had to get it insured for obvious reasons. You don't get insurance on a mobility car. And then 3 weeks later, I'm told, oh, you're fine, you can have the money back.
Okay, we're getting lots of texts in on this. 85058 is the text number. If this is something that you have been through, I'd be really interested to know your personal experience of the PIP assessment, which seems very thorough, to say the least. These texts have come in saying, hello, I have severe cerebral palsy and use an electric wheelchair. I've lost £108 per month going on to PIP from DLA. That's from Anastasia, who's in York. I've got multiple sclerosis and had my Motability car taken away due to the feather test. Now the car has gone. I've had to stop working. Now there are MPs calling for some changes to PIP to be made, isn't there?
Yeah, anyhow, because there's latest figures from the Ministry of Justice which show that 2/3 of people are winning on appeal. So the Conservative MP Peter Bone is calling for government to let people keep their cars until they get their decision.
There's a very, I mean, as always with these controversial issues, the government say one thing, and then various other people, and of course you're calling about the Department for Justice, so that's the government's own figures, but the charities say one thing and the government say actually very little successful appeals are happening. A spokesman for the Department of Work and Pensions said the reality is that since PIP was introduced in 2013, more than 2 million decisions have been made. Of these, just 7% have been appealed and 3% have been overturned.
Well, the Ministry of Justice figures are looking at 2015 to 2016.
Right.
But, you know, the government have said that 70,000 more people are on the Motability scheme than they were in 2010. People that are being assessed straight from PIP and not going from DLA to PIP are obviously being awarded the high rate, and you know most are eligible for the one-off payment of £2,000.
Yeah, see that.
But you know charities are really concerned about it. You know, you have your car is your
lifeline.
It's your job. You know,
and it's taken away while the appeals process is happening, isn't it? And then returned, which is a very strange way of doing things.
Alan, can I just ask you, do you now feel that this is okay, this is done and dusted, you won't have to be reassessed again for PIP, given the nature of your condition?
I do have a reassessment date. I think it's 2021.
2021.
There is a reassessment.
So they will look at it.
Yes, but the thing being, from my point of view, my condition is debilitating and it progressively gets worse. That's a fact. You know, the doctors can back me up, muscular dystrophy can back me up on this, but the people that are doing the assessments don't seem to be aware of my particular condition.
So do they not take in, Alan, into consideration at all the medical advice? I mean, it seems slightly odd that they would just ignore the medical advice, that this is, you've got leg braces on, it's a debilitating condition, the doctors are saying that it is.
Well, I did, and on my first appeal, I gave them the name and address of my doctor for them to write to my doctor, and he never had any contact with them at all. They never wrote to him, the DWP, for his opinions or anything. And that I find that astounding that that they didn't do that. Even my appeal letter, I said that I hadn't been assessed. I only was sat in a chair. The lady talked to me. She asked me if I could stand up, which I can stand up when I sort of push myself up out the chair. I can't stand up without pushing myself up. And she asked me to form an O with my thumb and forefinger, and she put her finger in and sort of pulled them apart. And that was all she did. Oh, and asked me if I could raise my arms above my head. And that's all she did to me. And I don't, to this day, I'm sure she doesn't have a clue what my condition, which is CMT, is all about.
Well, Alan, thank you very much indeed for your call. It's much appreciated. Thank you very much for talking to us. Just quickly mention that the DWP statements, we've mentioned most of it already, 70,000 people more on the scheme than there were in 2010, and anyone who receives the higher rate can qualify. The reality is, as we mentioned, since it was introduced in 2013, more than 2 million decisions have been made, 7% appealed, 3% overturned. But as Nikki mentioned, the Department of Justice figures are a little bit more recent than that. Constantly reviewing our processes to make sure they work in the best way possible. Just a couple of texts on this. Just heard the piece about PIP. The presenter say the form is just about ticking a few boxes. Now, I didn't say that. I said it's not, as long as the DLA form. James in Norfolk says, typical BBC, assume that any benefits being withdrawn must be bad and talk about the most extreme cases. Your attitude, how did they get it so wrong? Perhaps they got it right. It's okay for you in the BBC paid for by the state, not paid for by the state, by licence fee actually, but in the real world money has to be found from somewhere rather than magic out of the air. I take exception to that, James, to be honest with you. If you heard what Alan said that they did get it wrong because she said 5 minutes was the issue in terms of how far it took for him to walk to that person. She got the timings wrong, so she just did. Sorry about that.
And didn't contact his doctor. Now, fair enough. If you are going to, I mean, Nikki, there must be a lot of stories like this going around, isn't there? Well, and we're not making an assumption because, of course, the statistics show that the large amount of people that are not given Motability on appeal, they don't get it.
Yeah, but the government will say that those that have appealed and have appealed successfully have done. The reason why it's been successful is because they've provided more medical letters, evidence. Providing as much evidence as possible seems to be the best way possible forward. But it's not not the first time I've heard the caller that you've just had on your show, stories like that. There's a lot. And
the assessment begins from the very point you haven't even got into the building. By the time that's something I've also been told, that someone was offered a parking space, a disabled parking space. They said they needed one right close to the entrance. Then they said, "Oh no, I'm sorry, we don't have that for you. You're going to have to park elsewhere." And if you had then decided, "Oh, okay, I can go and park elsewhere," that would have been part of the assessment. I think this is why many charities and disabled people are concerned, because of hearing stories like that. Okay. A bit like it's tricking you out, Well, thank you very much indeed for bringing this to our attention. Nikki Fox there.